Dreamland with your Sensie Owl Bob, this guy right here, your storyteller, your griot. And don't believe a word I say. Uh-uh. Check it out for yourself. You need to let it resonate, right? Like Lydia, the person who heard Paul talk about the good news of the teachings of Jesus Christ. That's Lydia. So we hear that, remember it, be there, you know, understand it. Because that's when God talks to you straight in the heart, not through some preacher or book or, I mean, those things can give you a glimmer, but you have to hear God's word yourself, right? And that comes with a conversation. Like when I'm talking to you right here, I'm talking to God, right? I'm trying to bring forth God's word, not through me. I'm just the tuning fork, you know? It's not like I'm really, you know, proselytizing. Let's see. Nowadays, Sensie Bob and Cadre. Uh, 2141. Anyway, it's good to see you. Thanks for putting things in capital letters for me so I can see it. And because I don't. Oh, I do have my glasses with me. Let me put them on there. So, ooh, do. See, it's blue skies up there. See, that's blue sky, right? Anyway, Solartronic stones, I guess, right? So you into crystals? Is that what you're telling me? Crystals are just a nice lens. You know, this whole little cartoon carnival ride that we call life, and that's all it is. It's a sandbox for our soul to experience certain dynamics through the experience of our avatar, our body. We aren't our bodies. You know, we're not going to be born again into this body. Our body is that covenant, that spiritual covenant. That's our spiritual body. Tones I tone, right? So if you vibrate with love's co-creation as a covenant, then you're doing pretty good. And if you implement in every day and every way to take the piece of the earth of Jesus Christ unconditional forgiveness through your intent, meaning we're not perfect, you know, we're just chucklehead monkey kids, right? So we make mistakes all the time, but all you have to do is talk to God. God, help me out here. I don't have a clue here. I don't know why this happened. And give me insight. You know, God, tell me. You know, obviously not listening to what you're saying. So here, I'm giving you the wheel of my life. You drive the car. Yep, that's a good stone. And all of the stones are given to us by God's unconditional love. I mean, they are formed geologically in that manner. And you know, I just always get amused when I hear people, I'm an expert, I'm a geologist, and we have, you know, oil, and that's coming from dead dinosaurs. I don't think so. And that's why we have a limited amount. How come we haven't run out of it? We're pumping more than we ever have. That we haven't hit that. We're running out of this stuff because oil is the synovial fluid of the planet, right? And no matter how much we take out, there's still more there being manufactured. But the dynamics of that manufacturing has got, you know, every time I do something really stupid, which is, I don't know, a zillion times a day, God says, no, that's not sin. That's just an experience. But, God always, but there is a expense, you know, nothing, there's no free lunch, and you're basically going to have to pay for that, right? So, you know, I had a good 14 years of super hedonist corporate mercantile hedonism. You know, my clients were all desperate lawyers, so they'd hire me. I mean, I was the last stand. I always got them out of that corner. I said, listen, you pin yourself into a corner. All you got to do is don't do that again. Well, I was trying to make money. I just, I said, no, just don't paint yourself into a corner. Always leave God in the equation, and you'll do fine. And they, God, what are you talking about? I'm God. No, no, no. Sorry, buddy. You're not God. But I'm a lawyer. I'm a corporate lawyer. I have a 12-figure salary. Yeah, but you're like desperate every end of the week. You're looking for that paycheck because you overextended. That's what you are, overextended. Oh, here comes our boy. So, boy, you going to NC State? Is that where you want to go?
Hope so. Be a good school to go to.
You better study hard.
I will.
Yep.
I'll see y'all.
Yeah, buddy. Do. Anyway, I back in the 70s and 80s and 90s, even the 60s through the 90s, I was, an itinerant scholar. I went all over the place being scholarly, right? And that was my job. I would go do research. I mean, there would be academics who just taught the book. What's ever in the book, that's what it is. And that's, pretty much all religions. That's, Pharisees are strong and alive in religion because they're just, this is the word, the book. Now it is. Now the problem with the book is that God wrote it. And most chuckleheads don't know how to read it. It's supposed to be, you are the tuning fork, and that vibration is that sense ability of love's co-creation. If you can't feel that, if you can't vibrate that, then start hitting yourself in the head with the... No, don't do that. Anyway, so I were around a lot of people who were really into crystals, right? I remember one time I was a facilitator of rainbow gatherings. And again, that's a social scientist. That's why I kind of did it. I knew a lot of people who were, I was at Woodstock. I worked for Bob Goddard of, Joshua Light Show and Pig Lights. And they, basically worked for Billy Graham, not the evangelist, but that nice Jewish boy that had those two monoliths of rock and roll, Fillmore East and the Fillmore West. And Billy basically could make a buck on music, right? So his whole shtick of the Fillmore East, Fillmore West, he was really good at picking out the bands that would be big. And so he'd go to their, they'd have gigs at bars and they make $300 between the 12 of them. And he said, listen, you're really big and great. I have this big house here in San Francisco. It's got, 2,500 seats. I charge $5 a ticket. I will give you the door. What I'm going to keep, I'm going to have a 16-track Studer recorder and a nice Neve board, and I'm going to do a live tape of your show. I own that tape. I'm putting it in my vault. So when you become big and famous, I can make a record and produce it through my record company and out into my record stores and be played on the radio, and I will make all the money. But right now, you're going to make that 5 times 2,500 this tonight. I'll pay you cash, right? So that's how we got it. So whenever you hear Janis Joplin and the holding company and Chipmunk, you hear his voice. He was the basically offstage announcer. Janis Joplin and the holding company, right? And bam, bam, and Janis would sing. So pretty much all those songs and records were that, and that was Billy, right? So he produced Woodstock, and he let his nephew be the producer, right? So everyone thought the kid was doing it, but come on, the kid was the kid, right? He knew squat. He was just the cutout, right? Billy was getting to be known a bit too much. He didn't want to pay the guys who were going to be playing that arm and a leg because he was making a recording and a movie. Meaning if he hadn't made that movie, he didn't have a movie company. Like I had a production company in New York, and we would do stuff like that. But we would do more industrial kind of things. Billy had his own little movie guys, right? And they made that movie, and he produced it, and he put it out there, and everyone saw it, and that's why they then went and bought 18 trillion copies of that record, Woodstock, right? And he made a fortune on that one. And he did other, things. And he died, he got so big with it, he had his own little Bell Aerojet helicopter, and he had his pilot, and he was going to, um, you know, scout for the next big show somewhere in California. And it was a little bit foggy, and they ran into high tension lines, and bingo bango, that was the end of Billy. And so, and that is us, right? You can be bingo bango off the screen, right? So you have to, in every day and every way, take the piece of the earth and make it stronger, right? And Billy Graham was great. I met him. I was 16 years old. I was working for my electric mentor, Grandpa Stahl, and his son, Max Stahl, at Stahl Electric in New York City. And it was Nikola Tesla's bench electrician. And he started first off with Mohawk Electric, which was right where Hudson Street and Duane came together, where Duane Park is, right? And I was working for, I started working for the, Grandpa and Mike Stahl. Mike Stahl was more my dad than my father. My father was more or less just a sperm donor. Mike, when I was not in school, either, going to Hitler's Rifle Squad, which was the Holy Redeemer School where the nun murdered me in first grade. And then, I was lucky. See, catastrophe followed me everywhere. Death was my good friend. I always saw death right over in the corner of my eye. There he was, wearing one of those black suits that the guys in the cemetery stores wear, but he had a pumpkin head, and he had chiclets for teeth. So death never really scared me because I kept seeing him, and then I keep dying, and I come back, and many times, God and death were like, I'd see them there together, right, cracking jokes, one wearing the super orange yellow construction vest, and the other guy wearing his black suit, right, and so. That is God. God has this light about him, or it. There is no gender to God. Sorry, kids. There is no gender. And like I said, Lydia, she was a rich woman. Shouldn't have been in any possession of power, but she was, and she knew. She heard the good word from Paul about Jesus, but Paul was just a used car salesman, and she knew this guy was a huckster. She knew he was a Roman lawyer. She knew that he was a Pharisee, a tax collector, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's the people he hung with, Mark and Matthew were both that crew. Now, and, Luke was a doctor. So, but once they all received the sacrament of the Spirit, and the Holy Ghost was in them, that's when they shined. That's when we shine, when love's co-creation's inside of us, right? That's when we shine, right? When we understand the doorway of Jesus' unconditional forgiveness. We can only get there through going through that doorway of forgiveness. We have to forgive, and not just some stupid, oh yeah. No, you have to let it go. Otherwise, you're going to be in not a happy place. Anyway, so the rainbow gatherings were an outgrowth of Woodstock, and it came from the kids from Tennessee. What's his name? I forget his name. Sam something or other. But anyway, they owned the whole town. They kind of took it over and ran it as a collective, and it was quite nice. I forgot what they called it and how it worked, but it was quite nice. And they showed up at Woodstock, and the only reason no one died is that they brought, those guys were all Vietnam vet medics, so they brought their own medical thing, and they called it CALM, Center for Alternative Living Medicine. So the first time I showed up it was like maybe the 8th time they had a rainbow gathering. I showed up because I had all these friends who were, oh man, it's so cool, it's like Woodstock, you need to come. So I got dragged to it because, we need a guy like you. You're a really good healer, blah, 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 right? So I was there, and I showed up, and I was kind of just, I was a newbie, right? So I was the walk-around guy. I didn't want to just hang out in calm. So I went around to all the kitchens where someone got burnt or cut or throwed up or food poisoning or, all those kind of, or having a bad trip or any of the above, right? And I had my little bag of tricks. But I remember in the evenings, I would spend evenings either at Alcohol Village to keep those guys and gals kind of on the reservation, or I would go to COM, in case some emergency happened. But I could just kind of hang out there, and I had one of my hammocks there, so I could lie down, or I could, put someone in it so they needed to lie down. So because lying down on the ground, it's a good thing, but it makes people uneasy because they can't get up. But if you put them in a place that's really relaxing, like a hammock, they can let go. Because all they have to do is swing their legs over and they can stand up. So anyway, that was my shtick that first year. And got to know the people, right? And I just, and I would, pretty much sleep in the afternoon and, get up and be there from around dinner time, which was around 6, to about, 8 or 10 in the morning. And then I would go wherever the water was, I would go put myself in the water and sanctify myself, and then, go on my healing hammock. I had this great hammock that I had a tailor make. I found this really great hammock, 2-person hammock, and I had this tailor sew a nice little with a zipper on the side. It had a screen and it had a blackout thing, so you could get in there and zip it closed and be dark as night. So I could sleep anytime. And that's when I started making my healing sanctuary. I'd have a place near COM, and I'd have a place near the center circle, and I'd have my undisclosed healing sanctuary, where I'd take people who were really on whatever and take them up there and make them teas and talk to them and put them at hammock and put them in the dark out thing and talk to them in the dark, and they would come out okay, right? Oh, good old Mazul. Days of Noah. AI is recreating Jesus now. Oh, good. Isn't that fun? Jesus never left, kids. He's always here. So stop it, I don't care. If you don't know or don't feel like knowing, at some point you're going to have to let Jesus Christ into your heart as a sacred spirit. Be born again. I get born again like 40, 50 times a day, right? Every time I just let go, right? That's it. That's all you got to do. Anyway, so here we are, 17 minutes, 54 seconds. There's the same Solarionic stones, 2141. Good to see you. Thank you for being here all this time. And I'm going to say, talk to you later.